Okay, the time is 2 p.m. and I'm going to call the January 14th, 2025 regular council meeting to order. And I'll begin with the land acknowledgement that the City of Fort Saskatchewan is located on Treaty 6 territory in Métis Nation of Alberta, District 11. And we recognize that we stand upon the land that carries the footsteps of many Indigenous peoples, including the Nihilwak, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Métis. And the city honors the First Peoples of this land and is committed to fostering the reconciliation through relationship building, knowledge gathering, and education. So, and welcome back to everybody after our Christmas break. So with that, we have nothing on the consent agenda, so we'll move to approval of the minutes of the December 10th, 2024 regular council meeting. Councillor Blissard, you had your, I wasn't sure, maybe.
This wasn't on, but sure.
Yeah, it was.
It was more of an accident.
Okay, go ahead. You can.
I can make the motion.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes of the December 10th, 2024 regular council meeting.
All right, thank you. Are there any errors or omissions? Okay, not seeing any. I will close the motion. Please cast your vote. Thank you. Okay, delegations. If anybody wants to speak to any of the items that are not part of the public hearing, this would be your opportunity to do so. We'll open it up. Not seeing anybody racing down. Then we will move directly to public hearing number 1. Bylaw C17-24, road closure bylaw for a portion of 98th Avenue, second and third reading. So the process for this, for anybody who's watching or listening, is that administration will present, once I open the public hearing, administration will present the public hearing information. Following that, we will allow for questions, and then I will ask if anybody wishes to speak in favor or opposed. They will have an opportunity to come do so, and they would have 5 minutes. Following that, any questions, and then I would bring administration back, close the public hearing, and move forward with business arising from the public hearing. So, and I see you have both of them on there. I'm just curious, we're doing public hearings separately, correct? For each one? Yes. Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
So I will open the public hearing for bylaw C17-24 at 2:03. Welcome, Taryn.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Terrence Samra. I'm a planner here with the city. I'm here to present a brief summary of 2 bylaws. Bylaw C17-24, close a portion of 98 Avenue Road right-of-way, and Bylaw C20-24 to amend the land use bylaw to rezone lands in the downtown. These 2 amendments are being presented together as the applications are being processed concurrently. Just a housekeeping note that under eScribe, all the bylaw, all the information can be found under C17-24 in eScribe. For the outline of the presentation, we'll first start with a brief summary of the, or brief overview of the location. Then we'll discuss bylaw C17-24 first, then followed by C20-24. After, we'll follow with administration support, and last, we'll discuss the communication process. Looking at the location overview, I've highlighted the area in orange as the area to be redistricted, and the area in blue as the road closure area. Details about these applications will be discussed further in the presentation. This area of the city is in the eastern portion of the downtown, adjacent to Ross Creek and Langworthy Park. The Fort Mall site is to the west along 108th Street, and low-density residential can be found to the south in the Ross Creek Park neighborhood. I've highlighted 98 Avenue in black to show its approximate boundary as seen in the image. 98 Avenue extends to Ross Creek. However, only a portion of this road is undeveloped. As mentioned earlier, the area in blue is the area, or is the road closure area, and only this area is being closed within the right-of-way. Now let's start with the first application, bylaw C17-24, a proposed road closure for a portion of 98 Avenue. To begin, in June of 2024, the property owner of 10808 98 Avenue approached administration to close a portion of 98 Avenue, which can be seen in blue. The property owner expressed interest in purchasing the proposed road closure area and consolidating with the adjacent subject lands of 10808 98 Avenue. By doing so, the property owner will increase the lot size and developability of the land. The road allowance area is located along 98 Avenue, east of 108A Street, and is approximately 280 square meters. It is currently landscaped with trees and grass. The rest of 98 Avenue will remain open to access the adjacent park and existing walking trails. If closed, the road closure area would gain the R1 district, which is single detached residential district. Next, we'll discuss bylaw C20-24 to amend the land use bylaw to redistrict lands for RMMD, medium density multiple residential downtown. So in September of 2024, A3R Homes Limited, on behalf of the property owner, applied to redistrict a portion of 10808 98 Avenue, which will enable the development of townhouses. The subject area to be redistricted is north of the proposed road closure area. The subject site is located along 108A Street, north of 98 Avenue, which can be seen in orange. The application seeks to redistrict approximately 0.6 hectares of land from R1, single detached residential district, to RMMD, medium density multiple residential downtown. The subject site is in the vicinity of a multi-use trail and the adjacent Langworthy Park and Ross Creek, providing connections to the extensive trail network. Local transit is also available in the area. Next, I'll speak to about the conformance to the city's planning documents. The municipal development plan designates the subject area as part of 99 Avenue corridor, which designs neighborhoods that are pedestrian oriented and foster redevelopment of low intensity areas into medium and high density sites. The downtown area redevelopment plan designates this area as mall redevelopment precinct. The intent for this area to provide a variety of residential and commercial mixed-use options. Under this policy area, the designated density for the subject area is medium-density residential. Administration supports the applications due to the compliance with the municipal development plan and the downtown area redevelopment plan, as mentioned in the previous slide. Following first reading, the public hearing was advertised in the Fort Record for 2 consecutive weeks. Notices were delivered to the two property owners within 100 meters of the amendment areas. Notice of the proposed bylaw was posted on the city's website and social media accounts, and 1 response was received. And at this time, I'd like to answer any questions that council may have for administration.
Okay, thank you. And just so that we're clear, this one is for bylaw C17, but the report is for C17 and 20.
That's correct, Mayor Katcher.
Okay, thank you. But questions can relate to both of them, correct? Okay. All right, Councillor Abatoye, you're first. Just a second. Okay.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and good afternoon, everyone. My first question is about the public feedback we got about concerns about destruction of the park and Toboggan Hill. How is this issue going to be addressed?
Through your worship, Councillor Abatoye, so these applications is for a portion of for a road closure, as seen in blue, and a redistricting in orange. These applications there is going to be like no destruction of the park or anything like that. Just to touch on that response, our typical process, if we ever receive a response, we usually try to reach out to the resident or whoever to try to answer any questions, or because there could be confusion. Who knows? They might have heard something that could be incorrect. So we try our best to answer those questions as we can.
Yeah, I thought I was a long shot when I saw that email. I'm like, destruction of a park, so that has been addressed, I'm assuming.
Yes, I've emailed the resident back.
Thank you very much. My second question is just, so this property has the creek going by it, and do we have a minimum setback for developments in this types of things?
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoye, so in the land use bylaw, when it comes to lands such as this, we call them environmentally constrained lands. So it could be lands that are on a slope, adjacent to water, or things like that, right? So the land use bylaw, yes, it does have certain setbacks when it comes to your slope, how high you are, things like that. But also, that number it can vary. So, for example, if you get like a technical report, it's called a geotechnical report that usually provides a recommendation when it comes to lands that are environmentally constrained. They can also provide a recommendation saying you don't actually have to be, or if you're X amount of meters away, that's okay, right? So the report can provide those recommendations. The land use bylaw has a set of standards as well. So that's what the development officer would follow if this application will come in. However, if a geotechnical report is also associated with that application, the development officer could use that number as well.
So Mayor Kachi, just a follow-up to that, if that's okay. I'm just looking for, okay, thank you. So we don't have a minimum setback. It depends on the report that comes back from the geoassessment report. Is that what you're saying?
Through your worship, Councillor Abtoy, there are minimum setbacks within the land use bylaw that we have now, but the report can also provide a recommendation that could be followed as well.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Harris.
So looking at Appendix B, the area in yellow is owned by the McMillans at the present time, and they are ultimately the subject of this, both of these. The area to the north that is still zoned within the zoning of which the yellow would change, is that owned by the McMillans as well, or who owns that? Who's the owner of that other undeveloped portion just to the south of the existing condominium or duplex developments to the north along 108th Street? 10808.
All right. Sorry, I just pulled up the appendix right now. The adjacent lands. Yeah, that through your worship to Councillor Harris, that is all under one property owner. So the lands beside, or the lands that are adjacent to Orange, that's actually one large lot.
Okay, good. All right. So ultimately, and I guess to go further with Councillor Abatoy's question, we have development adjacent to the creek on the top of the bank, which has been there. I've been here since 1996, and it was there before I got here. And that obviously was given appropriate due diligence back in the day, I would imagine, and ultimately would be fairly consistent with what would happen here. And ultimately, what's being proposed once the rezoning goes through is something of similar nature.
Through your worship, Councillor Harris, I would agree with that statement, that you would see something similar, I guess, in that.
Yeah, so we're not endangering the environmentally sensitive area because ultimately we've already allowed development to take place adjacent to the creek and on basically the top of the slope.
Through your worship,
through your worship to Councillor Harris, that we'd go through that process as part of the development permit application. So we would go through that review. We'd establish where the top of bank is. If we would require any geotechnical studies, we would look at that and apply any recommendations, if any.
Okay, so obviously this is advanced to the point where we will follow due process, and ultimately you're talking about something to get to the point of development. But to get to that point, administration, I would imagine, has a reasonably high degree of comfort that this is doable. If we change the zoning and get rid of the piece of the road and whatnot?
Through your worship, yes, that's correct.
Okay, so we're moving in the right direction. Good, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blizzard.
I'm not sure why this little piece of land is so vital because the rest of it looks big enough to house already some of the other, if it's the same type of housing going in. But this is still a significant size.
Question.
Yes, it's coming. 30 by 100 feet. And I assume we own it right now, the city, correct?
Through your council, are you speaking of the area in
the
purple?
Pink area, the purple, whatever you.
Through your worship, council, that's correct. It's road allowed, so it'd be city property.
City property.
City owned.
So what's going to happen to it? Are we selling it? Are we waiting? I mean, we should still. It's a significant enough. It should still be dealt with at fair market value. What's happening to it?
Through your council, Blizzard, the property has expressed interest into purchasing it. So. That would be one of the next steps following after this is when you do close a road, some things that come out is selling it to say another property or you can choose to develop it, whatever it may be. So that would be part of the next steps coming forward.
Okay, It's not just given away though.
through your worship, council visit, there would be discussions, a land sale discussion, and when it comes to land sale, council is involved in that process.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Not seeing any additional questions. So, just a second. Okay, I see Councillor Noyan waving his hand. Go ahead, Councillor Noyan.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I was having trouble raising the hand virtually. Just a question of curiosity: why is this considered a road allowance when there's no road there? Like, what's the history behind that? Might have missed something there.
Through your worship to Councillor Noyan, I guess road allowances, they can always they're not usually one singular shape, or they can be in different widths and things like that. But as to why it's like that, I would imagine when the plan was done back in the 50s or the 60s, I think there would have been future planning put in place, because if you can tell 108 A Street, it does kind of act more of a lane. So I believe at one point another road would have came, which probably would have been taken as 109 Street. However, those development plans never came through. So I would imagine the reason why this 98 Avenue is a little different in shape is due to, I guess, plans that were put in place but just never followed at whatever time that may be.
Yeah, thanks for that response. So, because just do the map and the pink outline of the rectangle. It looks like the planning was done so that the road allowance had.
You're really hard to hear, Councillor Noyan. You're really hard to hear. Can you put your mic closer or turn it up?
Okay. Is that any better?
A little bit.
Yeah, okay, I was just giving a response because it looks like there was potentially a setback from the road that was included as part of the road in planning, if that was done 50 years ago, and that might have been the case, and I don't expect you to have insight into that, but it doesn't look like it would have been conducive to an actual roadway being a part of that property.
Through your worship, Councillor, no, sorry, what would have been the question though? Sorry.
He was asking about the road, if like 50 years ago, if that would have been conducive to the property.
Through your worship, Councillor, knowing I wouldn't be able to answer that question. I don't know the answer to that one.
Okay, great. And if you can bear with me here, who is responsible for the geotech report?
Through your worship, Councillor Noy, it would be the applicant, whomever would apply for the, like, say, a development permit. They would be responsible for, as part of their application package. Administration can ask them to provide a geotechnical report to support their application.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go on to round two. Councillor Harris.
Well, this is a question, I guess, to administration. I hope you've had a conversation with the property owner, because I have had a conversation with the property owner who had indicated in the past that when they built their house, and you can kind of chime in on here, that they ultimately developed this portion of the road allowance as part of soft landscaping and parking and whatnot. So have you had that conversation? This is my question with the property owner, because that would answer this question very clearly. And you haven't been here that long, I understand that. But have you had that conversation with the property owner? He's here today, and he can expand on that if and as required, because that would clarify this.
Through your worship, councillors, that could, yeah. I'm not aware of. I haven't had that conversation. So.
Okay.
You're good?
Yeah, well, that's part of this puzzle, and it goes to Councillor Noyan's question. Somebody needs to be able to answer that.
So potentially the person who's dealing with this may come up and speak in favor, and if he comes up and speaks in favor of it, he can answer your questions.
Good, I hope
that
so.
would be my hope.
I think that would help to expand upon this reason for this road closure.
Okay. All right. Looks like I'm looking for any more hands on there. Oh, just a second. You guys are like about half an inch by half an inch. So, Councillor Kelly?
Thank you, Mayor Catcher. I did send a text in, but it was just toward the end of your closing comments. I think the point to make here, or I think what Councillor Harris is pointing out is that road allowance was surveyed in when Fort Saskatchewan was probably 100 people. It has never been used because it dead ends at the creek, and the development as it occurred over history, over time, meant that that particular piece of land became, or that road itself, I should say, became irrelevant and was never developed as a road. And I'm fairly certain that everybody in the community eventually forgot that, in fact, it was a road allowance. It did get borrowed, for lack of a better term, because it was inactive by the people that live adjacent to it. But I think that's irrelevant to the question at hand. It is a road allowance.
Do you have
There's
a
a party
question?
interest.
Do you have a question?
Yeah. You know what? Good point. I'm going to wait. I'll offer that comment in the next go around. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. So that appears to be all the questions. So I'll just have you step to the side, and I will ask at this point in time if anybody wishes to come and speak in favor or opposed to bylaw C17-24. Okay, I'm going to ask a second time if anybody wishes to come and speak in favor or opposed and answer any questions. Okay. Did you want to come up and, because there's questions that are outstanding? Yeah, you are. Yeah, it's a public hearing. Please come up. Okay, well, please come up to the speaking. No, during a public hearing, anybody, no, right. Middle one. Okay, and she'll put the speaker on. So I'll have you state your name, your address, and you would state you're in favor or opposed, and you will have 5 minutes to speak to it.
Okay, my name is Roger Macmillan. My wife's name is Leslie, and we are owners of the property 10808 98th Avenue. And I'm in favor of the development, and I'd be prepared to answer any questions anybody may have.
Okay, so just stay there, and I'll open it up for questions. All right, Councillor Harris.
So, Mr. McMillan, good to see you here. And I understand we've had previous conversations about this in terms of, this goes back a few years. But was your, how did you built your house, how many years ago? The house that lives there, you're living in right now. It was quite a while ago, right?
Yeah, no, we didn't build the house. The house was there. It was owned by a guy. He was a manager with the city of Fort Saskatchewan, and he passed away quite a long time ago.
Okay.
But the history of it was, I was told by his daughter that in those days they didn't really follow all the rules, and he built the house there. I don't know how he got permission to build it, but he built it there. And that little gravel road in front now, not the piece that the one where the people go to tobogganing, that wasn't there when we moved in. It was just a piece of dirt. So they put that gravel in so that we could get access to our house. So, and then I only found out about 3 or 4 years ago, as you probably remember, that the city owned this strip of land halfway across my lawn, which I've been maintaining for 53 years, including clearing out the sewage blockages for 5 or 6 times. Anyway, I don't think anything was recorded in those days, or as far as I know.
So ultimately, the previous property owner who you purchased the property from had ultimately used that property as access into their house, the house that you bought.
That's right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And I don't know, but if you line that piece of land that we're talking about, if you line it up, it's dead in line with the main part, 98th Avenue. That's why it's 98th Avenue. And then I guess he took it over because he owned it alone in front of his house.
Okay.
So that's why there's never been a road there. It's always been a lawn.
So if council closes the road, you're prepared to purchase it, I understand.
Yeah, I've already been negotiating with 2 or 3 people with the city, and we've agreed on a price and everything. So
Okay.
they wanted an
Yep.
official
We-
offer.
Yeah, okay, just don't say the price in public.
Yeah.
Oh no, I won't.
Okay.
No, they wanted me to give them a letter of an offer to purchase the land.
Okay. So your intent ultimately is to sell the property where the existing house lived, and you wanted to build something on that?
This is the plan, in a nutshell. My house is there now. We want, because of Leslie's estate, the developer is going to build me a bungalow right next to my house on that questionable piece of land.
Okay.
He's going to build that first, and when that's complete, we're going to move out of our house into the new one, which is a similar size, and then he's going to demolish mine and develop the rest of the lot. It's just so that we don't have to move anywhere.
Okay. So ultimately then the balance of your property will be sold to this developer. The developer will help you out and ultimately add
Yeah.
development to our
Yeah, that's
community.
right.
That's your understanding?
That's it, yep. That's
Okay.
right.
That's the bottom line of why we're here today.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blizzard, questions?
Well, in a way, but it's actually more, I think, to staff than to Roger. So what's the width of this land? Because don't we all, any property owners, do some clearing? Like the road right-of-way goes onto our grass in most cases. Is this a wider than normal piece of property?
Okay,
It's 24 feet wide.
Second,
Oh,
she'll
sorry.
answer in the back.
they will answer that when they come back.
Okay.
Do you have any questions for
No,
Mr.
I'll leave that.
McMillan? Okay, looking for hands. Okay, that looks like all the questions. Thank you very much for coming out this afternoon. All right.
Thanks.
Okay. You
Thanks
can
for inviting me.
take a seat. We will be dealing with this shortly.
Thank you.
All right, and I will ask second last call for anybody wishing to come and speak in favor or opposed to this bylaw. Not seeing anybody else coming up, then I will invite administration to come back for final questions. Okay, so Councillor Blizzard, you can either re-ask your question or you can just answer it.
To your worship, Council Blizzard, I'm pretty sure this is the information you were looking for. The dimensions are 7.32 meters by 38.1. Is this the information you were looking for here?
Yeah, and that's significantly larger than what the normal road right-of-way is? That would be on a normal property along a roadside, right? Off the road itself.
Sorry, can you clarify that, please?
So we all, because we see it right now with all the digging going on for the cables that are going in. When the city owns some of the land that is not roadway, that's part of the grass in front of most people's properties, right? So this is significantly wider than that. And I don't mean the 38, I mean the 7. So 7 meters, that's 21, 22 feet.
Yeah, through your worship, Council Blizzard. Yeah, like for example, if you have, say, if you go down to like a neighborhood, you have your road, and then you have like a boulevard space. 7.32 meters would be, I'd say, much larger than what you
most of
typically
it
would
is
see.
6 feet maybe, if that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that looks like all the questions that I'm seeing from anybody. So with that, I will close the public hearing on bylaw C17 and we'll go to business arising for C17.
Your Worship, administration would recommend giving second reading to both bylaws. The wording of the bylaws can be found in the
Okay,
council
so
report.
just point of clarity, I just said, are we doing separate public hearings? And
Oh,
there was
right.
a head nod.
Your Worship, that is correct. Sorry. The recommendation would be to give second reading to bylaw C-17-24.
And then third reading. Okay. Okay, Councillor Harris.
I'd be prepared to move that council give second reading bylaw C-17-24 to close a portion of 98th Avenue Road right-of-way.
Okay, I'll accept that motion. You may speak to it.
Yeah, I've had a chance to talk to Mr. McMillan a couple of times. I understand what his thought process is in doing this, and I think that ultimately it makes sense to close this portion of the road allowance that will ultimately allow for the development of that area. I think it's consistent with what's gone in the past, and I think it's good for that potential neighborhood, and I don't see any potential downside of it at all. So I support second reading.
Okay, thank you. Second reading is open for discussion and debate. I'll support it as well. It's ironic when these things go in the paper and how much misinformation goes out to the public, and it kind of alarms the public. And I think that's why the question was asked about the little snow area in the park area. So people can be confident that no harm will come to their toboggan hill or to the little park area. That has nothing to do with it. So I fully support this. Okay, I'm just looking to see if there's anyone else on discussion and debate on second reading. If not, do you wish to close?
No more.
Okay, the motion is closed. Oh, just a second. Councillor Kelly, it just popped up. Councillor Kelly?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, thank you, Mayor Catcher. Conclude the comments I was starting to make earlier. The piece of property in question is a section of road allowance that is historically not been needed or used by the city. Looking forward, given the direction of the road, the presence of the creek, and the industrial land on the other side of the creek, it's very unlikely that that section of road allowance will ever be used. So I'm happy that somebody can find a use for it, and that use improves the downtown, the development of the downtown core. So I wholeheartedly support the second and third reading on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris, you said nothing on close?
Nothing.
All right, I will close the motion for second reading of bylaw C-17. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. You can continue with third.
Along that line, I would move the council give third reading to bylaw C-17-24 to close a portion of 98th Avenue Road right-of-way.
All right, thank you. Do you have anything further to speak to it?
No, I think it's firmly understood as to why this is happening and the benefit from this motion.
Okay, thank you. It's open for discussion and debate. Okay, not at this point in time, we're moving a little fast. So if you do, throw up your hand and I will watch for you, because sometimes it takes a little bit for it to come through to our technical people, but I'm not seeing anything. So I will close the motion for third reading. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. So now we'll move on with public hearing bylaw C-20-24. So not quite the same process. You've already provided all of the information, but I will open the public hearing at 2:34. For administration, do you have anything further on comments or presentation?
No, Mayor Catcher.
All right. So I will ask. You can just stay there, I think. If anybody wishes to come forward to speak in favor or opposed to bylaw C-20. Okay, give a second call. Not seeing anyone. All right. So, any questions of administration or council to administration? Okay, so I am going to close the public hearing for bylaw C 2024, fastest public hearing we've ever had, and I will go to business arising from the public hearing.
Your Worship, the recommendation for administration would be to give second reading to bylaw C 20-24.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Abatoye, you'd like to make the motion?
I'll make a motion that Council gives second reading to bylaw C20-24 to amend land use bylaw C23-20 to redistrict a portion of land of lot 1A, block 37, plan 6067 KS from R1, single detached residential district to RMMD, medium density multiple residential downtown.
Okay, thank you. I'll accept that motion. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I will. I think that's, I definitely support the motion. I think that it's good use of land in that we're seeing a lot of growth in our community. And being in real estate, I know that I get a lot more, I want to say 4 times more calls for properties in Fort Saskatchewan compared to my Edmonton listings. So I think that this will help open up that demand in housing in Fort Saskatchewan as well as affordable housing. And I think it will also help with optimizing land use. So I definitely support the motion. I think that we need to be building more houses that people, are able to afford and, would help especially first-time home buyers. So yeah, I support the motion.
Okay, thank you. The motion is now open for discussion and debate. Okay, I'm going to support this motion as well. I think it's a very creative way to fill in this piece of land. The story is really interesting. We should actually have that captured about how a piece of land of that size became what it was, and how the house got built and everything. I think it's a really unique story, and you would never see that much land in anybody's yard ever again. So I think it's very creative, and I think it will finish off that piece of land that's there. And so hopefully when all of this is said and done, that they will live a nice many more years there. So I will fully support this. Okay. With that, anything on close? Okay, second reading is closed. Please cast your vote. That is carried unanimously. And would you like to do third? Yes. You have to turn your buzzer back on. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I move the motion that council give third reading to bylaw C20-24 to amend land use bylaw C23-20 to redistrict a portion of lot 1A, block 37, plan 6067 KS from R1, single detached residential district to RMMD, medium density multiple residential downtown.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything further to speak to it?
Nothing further.
All right, thank you. It's open for discussion and debate. Okay, not seeing any. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you again. I appreciate your comments just from a couple minutes ago, Mayor Katcher. The story is unique and is part of the history of the community. And I do think it should be captured. Having said that, though, it's not a terribly unique situation in the city of Fort Saskatchewan. I am aware of at least one other situation where a sizable chunk of road allowance was incorporated and fenced off and used as a yard for decades. They normally come to surface. First of all, it's not a big deal that the property isn't being used by the city. And rather than grow weeds and maintain it, having it looked after as part of the yard, I think makes infinite sense. But the issues tend to surface when the property comes up for sale and a real property report is authorized and an actual survey checked, and all of a sudden the alarm bells go off. So it's unique, and the story is interesting, but I don't think the situation is terribly unique in the city of Fort Saskatchewan, or I suspect any other mature community. And with that, I'm willing to run. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Abatoy. Anything on close?
Nothing in close.
Thank you. The motion is now closed. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. All right. And we will move on to the next one, which is bylaw C21-24 to amend the land use bylaw C2320 text amendment to add place of worship to the AGS district. First reading.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Terrence Samra. I'm a planner with the city, and I'm here to present a brief summary of bylaw C21-24 to amend the AGS district of the land use bylaw. To begin, we'll start with a locational overview. This parcel, which is shown in the area hatched in black, is part of lands that were annexed in 2020 and is zoned as AGS, Agricultural General South. The subject site is 6.7 hectares and is south of the city's current material handling site, accessed via Range Road 224, and is bound by Ross Creek on the east and agricultural lands to the south. The northwest portion of the subject site has been previously developed and includes an existing house and yard space. Currently, the site is not serviced with municipal water and sewer services. The proposed amendment is to enable the development of a church on the subject site. The applicant is proposing to add a place of worship as a discretionary use to the AGS district. Furthermore, the applicant is proposing to add a fundamental use provision so that the use will only be allowed on the developable land of the site, and this is shown in Appendix I. To note, a fundamental use provision sets conditions that must be met in order to develop a use within the district. So to summarize, if a place of worship would only be considered as a discretionary use if the proposed development is sited within the designated developable land that is shown in Appendix I. If the development is to occur outside that designated area, the use cannot exist and the development may not occur. So the following is a map of Appendix I. I have added an aerial image for further emphasis. As seen in the image, the area is hatched in black, and the area is the developable, and this is the developable area. Development of the place of worship would only occur in this area. The remaining lands would remain for agricultural purposes. Administration supports the proposed amendment due to the application. The application supports maintaining a large agricultural parcel. The proposed amendment to the AGS district focuses on development within an already disturbed northwest portion of the parcel, which was described in Appendix I. A fundamental use provision is also included within the district. This fundamental use provision, or FUP, minimizes further fragmentation and preserves that agriculture viability of the remaining lands. By restricting the church development to the developable lands, this further emphasizes maintaining larger parcels. And finally, the place of worship use is limited to the previously developed area. The district does not allow new agricultural lands to be converted to non-agricultural purposes before an area structure plan is approved. Should council give first reading to the bylaw, a public hearing will be held to advertise, or a public hearing will be advertised in the Fort Saskatchewan Record. Landowners within 100 meters of the proposed development will be delivered a notice. A copy of the proposed bylaw will be on the city's website, and the target date of the public hearing is February 11th, 2025. And at this time, I'd like to answer any questions council may have for administration.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Kelly for clarifying questions.
Thank you. A couple, please. First is the place of worship would be in the hatched area. I understand that completely. But when it comes to property tax roll, the place of worship would have a designation, and the agricultural land that's adjacent to it, even though it might be the same owner, would have a different role and be taxed for property tax purposes differently.
Through you, Worship, to Councillor Kelly. So that's certainly not a question that we anticipated. We can bring that information back at second reading.
Thank you. The question, the point obviously is that places of worship get a break under our property tax system, but agricultural land or any other lands do not. So I'd be interested in knowing the answer to that, please. The second question revolves around the agricultural use, and I suspect you've already answered that question when you made the statement that, or my question when you made the statement that it cannot be rezoned from agricultural until an area structure plan is put in place. But do you believe the isolated location of that remaining small parcel of land is a viable agricultural opportunity in today's world in Fort Saskatchewan area?
Through your worship, Councillor Kelly, just to confirm your question, you were could you clarify? Are you mentioning that northwest portion is agriculturally viable, or the remaining portion to the south?
No, the portion that would not be place of worship zoned.
Okay, fair enough, Councillor Kelly. I believe like that land currently to the south is being used for agricultural purposes. I believe in the ramp that in the regional agriculture master plan, which was developed by the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board, that we do have, Fort Saskatchewan does have a large amount of land that is prime agriculture. I believe that land is included in that. So when it comes to viability of agricultural lands, I would say that agricultural land to the south would be viable. Yes.
Thank you. I'll comment when it's time and appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Blizzard.
So this area that has a house on it right now, would it have water lines, city water and sewer lines, or does it have septic tank and a deep, shallow well cistern?
Through your worship to Councillor Blizzard, right now there are not serviced with municipal water or sewer service. So I believe it would be you would use septic tanks and those type of means for agricultural purposes. So
when a property gets more intense usage, as it would as a place of worship, would they require city water? I mean, the sewer system or septic tank for a house isn't going to be adequate for, multiple people coming to a worship.
Through your worship, Council Blizzard, I think when it comes to that, that's something that could be found at the development permit stage. For example, when you would submit your application, and the intensity of what you're trying to develop. We do these applications. We do them we do discuss with our engineering group or in other departments. So if for some reason that this use that you're trying to do cannot be like the septic tank or whatever service you have on site aren't able to accommodate, then yeah, you might require additional upgrading of municipal infrastructure to support your development, and that would be discussed at that time.
And that would be up to them, the owner.
Through your worship, through your worship, Councillor Blizzard, if infrastructure is required to for your use, then that would be, I believe the applicant would be required to provide.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harris.
Along that line, what mechanisms does the city have to compel the applicant? Now, we're dealing with zoning here, I realize that, but that zoning, if it goes through, ultimately then paves the way for an eventual development of a church. But what mechanisms does the city have to compel the applicant to actually undertake the servicing of that property if and as required, if we determine within our purview as a municipal authority is required? How do we compel that? Or can they roadblock us and say, well, we're not doing that. We're gonna live on a septic, and we're gonna live with a water system that is incomplete. I can see all kinds of problems with that. And have your conversations ultimately with the applicant led you to believe that this is doable and that this zoning makes sense?
Through your worship, Councillor, I'll probably defer to Craig on this one. I kind of have an answer, but I would probably need more time, and I'm pretty sure Mr. Thomas can answer it probably very quickly.
Through your worship to Councillor Harris. So there's a couple of tools available to us, but usually that comes at the subdivision stage. The statute enables us to require the applicant of a subdivision to provide services to the site to accommodate the subdivision or the development specifically. That could be done with a development permit as well. Our authority is a little bit, it's not as strong with the subdivision. Alternatively, the provision of services or the lack thereof could also limit the development itself. So, for example, if it's a fairly large place of worship and it could fit within the development standards, depending on how large the building is and how many people it would accommodate, it's going to have certain demands on servicing. So, if they can't provide that completely on site, then it's going to probably limit the size of the building.
Okay, well, I'm just looking for some assurance. I'm not opposed to the location of a church in that area. I mean, we've got a major institutional use right across the road, and there's a lot of separation. So I'm not fundamentally opposed to that, but I don't want to be in a situation where we've done something through a zoning context that does not allow us
We're not
to
debating
ensure
it right
that
now.
these things happen. So that's why I'm asking whether you have those mechanisms to have a concrete and a reasonable discussion with the developer, when that happens. And your answer was, kind of?
Through you, Worship, to Councillor Harris, we have more levers, I guess, at the subdivision stage. So if it's just a development, it would be more difficult.
But is the subdivision, this piece of property is already subdivided out of the larger remnant, this is a remnant parcel, so is subdivision even required?
It would not be required. I mean, if somebody wanted to come in, if this were to go through and we could receive a development permit the next day.
Okay, so development permit is the only mechanism you have to have that conversation with the church in their development of a church on that site.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. That's all I was looking for.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we're just asking questions. We're not into debate yet. Councillor Abatoye?
Thank you for your presentation. My first question is around feedback. Have we gotten any kind of feedback from neighboring properties or from the communities with respect to the proposed amendments?
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoy, for this application, I have not heard anything from adjacent property owners.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. My second question is probably going to be further in the future, but I'm just wondering if you've taken thoughts as regard the traffic patterns and how this development could potentially impact Range Road 224.
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoy, when it comes to like technical reports, I kind of mentioned that at the development permit stage, you can definitely ask for those type of reports. But as of right now, we are looking into amending the land use bylaw. Like, we don't know like the size of the building or what type of intensive use this place of worship may be. So, yeah, definitely that conversation would probably happen at the development permit stage because of, like I said, you could ask for those reports at that stage, but at this time, no. Okay. Not aware of any impacts to Range Road 224.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next, I have a few questions. So in your report, you've talked a little bit about servicing. This is 3.5 acres, and you're saying the entire 3.5 acres could be developed?
Your worship, yes, the developable area. So as Appendix I would be 3.5 acres or 1.4 hectares. So if you were to put the place of worship there, as long as it meets the regulations of the land use bylaw, and if it means that you could fill the entire area, by all means. But there are restrictions when it comes to setbacks and things like that. So the church could, or the place of worship could be placed anywhere on that site as long as it meets those regulations.
Okay, so when this came to us before, we were told that through the land use, the only thing that could be developed was the existing footprint area of the house and maybe a shed or something. But now you're saying 3.5 acres or could be developed into one big church and a parking lot?
Through worship, that is correct. We're saying that 3.5 hectares anywhere on that or 3.5 acres anywhere on that site is where the place of worship could occur. Yes.
So
Your
why-
worship, if I could maybe just add to that, so it would have to comply with the development standards, as Mr. Samra has noted. So things like setbacks, parking, landscaping. So taking all those things into consideration is probably going to limit the footprint of the building itself. So for example, from the Range Road, there is a 20-meter setback. And then we would also have discretion, because it is a discretionary use, to make sure that there would be adequate separation, to ensure that there's parking, these sorts of things. So we would want to make sure that it's consistent with and aligns with the purpose of the district, which speaks to preserving the agricultural areas. So anything that might impact that is something that might constrain development on the area.
Okay, I got a bunch more questions, but I've got Councillor Noyan, so I'll be back to you on round 2.
Yeah, thanks. Line of questioning is in course with my thoughts. Under risk analysis, it mentions offsite levies. Do we have any policy regarding offsite levies for servicing, or is this something that's going to be considered on an as-need basis for a site like this?
Through your worship to Councillor Noyan, I believe through the current offsite levy bylaw that we have, that this area would be excluded. So I don't think the offsite levy bylaw can trigger any type of, say, payment or whatever requirement, infrastructure improvements or anything like that. Any type of upgrading of infrastructure, it would either be done through a development permit stage, because at this time that's the only possible avenue that would come, because as Mr. Thomas has mentioned, like if you do subdivision or other something else, that you may have more more policy or regulations that administration could do, but at this time the development permit stage would probably be the best path for any type of improvements to infrastructure.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Taryn. And so we're not going to hear any further detail about that until it comes to second reading. The need for a proper approach, is it planned for like pavement, parking lot, pavement approach, and then curb and gutter going into this site? Because that's a high cost. And is the applicant prepared to pay for that?
Through your worship to Councillor Noyan, I don't want to speak for the applicant, but I would say that is something. I hope that's something that is looked at from the applicant, because these are all, I guess, part of developing a place of worship or any use you're doing. That these are things that could come up, but when it comes to when that type of development has to occur, it would be at the development permit stage. So that would be, it would be more of a discussion at that time.
Yeah, this is a little tough to decide on here because we don't have enough information. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Macon, you're still on round 1.
Thank you. My question is actually going back to the questions around building size on this property. Just listening to your response on that. So are you saying that we don't actually have a specific limitation on the size? Because I thought that we had specific coverage based on percentage of the lot size.
Maybe I'll answer this. So through your worship to Councillor Macon. So this is a little bit of a unique situation because we have the parcel of the site itself. So any setback and development standards are going to apply to the parcel of land. What we've done here is kind of identified the development area. So that's where development is limited to. So those setbacks, in a sense, kind of apply only to kind of where the front property line would be, which would be next to the road. But it is also a discretionary use. So the development authority could kind of use its discretion to determine where the buildings can be located, where the parking areas are going to be, where the landscaping is going to be, and so on. I think it is important to note at this stage, with the change in the land use bylaw or the amendment to the land use bylaw. We're just simply providing those development rights to this particular parcel of land. We don't know what's going to be developed at this stage. So when it comes to things like kind of understanding what the upgrades are going to be, what the servicing requirements are going to be, that is something that's considered at the development permit stage, because we might have an idea, but we don't know exactly what that development's going to look like. So what's before council today, if this amendment goes through, it's simply giving those development rights to the property owner. But what gets developed will be subject to review, and there is quite a bit of discretion that would be applied.
Thank you.
You're good? Okay. Okay, I'm going on to round two. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas or Mr. Fleming, it seems to me that 3.5 acres approximately would be more than enough space to put in a compliant septic system, field system to service the wastewater needs of a development of like a church. Is that not correct?
Through your worship, Councillor Kelly, some of the conversations that we've had just internally, it could be provided. It really depends on how it's engineered and how it's designed, but it could be something that's done from my understanding.
I would think so, and I agree. It depends on the load, obviously. Water, it's not unreasonable to, and certainly not unprecedented to have buildings and or residences serviced with holding tanks for fresh water, even in our community. Is that an accurate statement?
Through you, worship, Councillor Kelly, I think it's rare. There are situations in certain parts of the city like Clover Park, but they're probably unique situations where there is on-site services specific to this situation.
I'm not sure I understood your response. Clover Park was without city water until a few years ago. The acreage development that's adjacent to the area structure plan that we're going to consider later in today's meeting was without city water until a year or two ago. It's not uncommon for rural or semi-rural areas, or pardon me, developments to be serviced with a water storage tank. Again, I ask, is that a reasonable statement?
Through your worship, to Councillor Kelly, yes. And sorry, I might have misunderstood your question the first time.
And I might have misspoken too, Mr. Thomas. No worries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris, you're next.
It's kind of a technical question, and if you don't want to answer it today, we'll answer it, presuming this passes for first reading and we go to a public hearing. How close is the nearest fire hydrant? And that's either a rhetorical question or something for consideration for reply at an appropriate time. Because ultimately, I think if we have an institutional use in this location with this particular type of zoning, then ultimately I'd be curious as to how close firefighting capability is to this property, should it be developed in the future.
Your worship, Councillor Harris, we'll look into that one for you.
Right.
You're good? Okay, I've got a couple more questions. Okay, so if another developer came to us with a proposal and wanted to have 3.5 acres carved out to do something, and didn't want to do an ASP, would you really consider it?
Your worship, I think it through administration we'll look at every application. I think, but the thing is, every application, I think, when it comes to something like this, will always be unique. It all depends on the characteristics of the parcel. I think what we're trying to explain for this application is this northwest portion. It has already been developed on, right? Like I mentioned, there's a house, there's a shed there. What we're trying to say is just redeveloping it into, say, into this time into a place of worship, compared to if another developer came to a parcel to the south and said, I want to put a church here, right? Well, it would really depend. Are they redeveloping, or are they trying to fragment a piece of agricultural lands that could be viable, right? So it's hard to say if we would, like I said, we definitely would look at the application, we would discuss with them, but to consider, it really depends on the characteristics at that time.
Okay, so my next one is just when it comes back for the public hearing and second reading, I guess what I would like to have come back is when the timeframes are that we would actually require an ASP, when the off-site levies would come into place and how they would be applied. I think that's very important. And the servicing, how we're going to deal with the servicing of that area going to the south, since we are dealing with, those are some questions that I have, and I think they're just reaffirmed by the questions that I've heard here today. So I'll leave the rest of my questions for when it comes back, but I really need to have answers on those. Okay, thank you. So we'll go to round 3. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor Katcher. Preston, mistake, no question.
Pardon?
No question. I hit the button by mistake.
Oh, okay. And I don't know if I need a hearing aid, but everybody sounds really, really hard to hear. So if everybody can really lean into their microphones when they're speaking today, it would be appreciated. Thanks. Okay. Okay, so that appears to be all of the questions. So what is the wish of council? Go ahead, Councillor Blizzard.
I can make first reading.
Sure.
It is first reading, so I do believe in giving it a chance, and then we'll look at it again. I'll make a motion that council give first reading to bylaw C21-24 to amend land use bylaw C23-20 by A, adding place of worship as a discretionary use within section 9.11.2 brackets C. B, by adding that the use of place of worship shall only be considered as a discretionary on the developable land legally described as Lot 1A, Plan 902-0569, as shown in Appendix 1, that one I assume, as a fundamental use provision within Section 9.11.2 in brackets A. And further, that a public hearing be scheduled for February 11th, 2025. And in speaking to this, as I said, it's first reading, so we'll go with this and then look at it again February 11th.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up for discussion and debate. And I've got a little bit. So I guess, given the questions, the magnitude of the questions that have been asked here today, would that actually satisfy? You would have enough time to come up with the answers for all of those?
Your Worship, yeah, I believe we could be able to do that for you. That is enough time.
Okay. I really have concerns with this once again. We're doing something without an area structure plan. We would let no other developer do this. I know that for a fact. And this doesn't have anything to do with AMRB or anything else. It has to do with planning in the city. There's no water, there's no servicing. Currently, there's no offsite levies. We were told once before that it could only be built to the standards of what, or the size of what the house was. Now we're told, well, it could be pretty well any size of church, which is different. So I have a lot of concerns, and it's going to take a lot of convincing to get me to do anything to support this when it comes forward. I'm going to be right out there. So unless those questions are answered definitively, I would really struggle with supporting this because I think it's unfair to the rest of our development community who may want to just go buy an orphaned piece of land and develop something. So I'm standing by my grounds on this. Councillor Kelly on discussion and debate.
Thank you. I too would like the answers to the questions posed by Mayor Katcher. I'm not that hung up on it though. I think this piece of property is unique. It's hemmed in by the provincial jail to the west and by the creek to the east and by an acreage development to the north. That's and the boneyard for the city to the north as well. So I think it's a unique piece of property. I happen to think personally that it's a good location for a church. But I would like to know what the city might be foregoing in offsite levies, for instance, before we make a final decision. As far as the utilities hookup go for that church, if it is just a church, I'm not hung up on that. I'm convinced that it could be designed with an appropriate field and a holding tank for an appropriate supply of fresh water. So I look forward to getting first reading done and maybe a bit more information for the second reading, and we'll take it from there. But right now, for sure, I support the concept. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris.
I guess like you, Mayor Katcher, I have concerns that, that we're doing something for a church because they're a church. I think if they want to develop something, I think they should be compliant with all of the development regulations that we have in place in subdivision and planning and those regulations. But I agree with Councillor Kelly. I'm not opposed to a church in that location because it's probably not a bad location. But I don't think the church should expect special treatment relative to having to do the due diligence from a planning and development standpoint to ensure that their development is compliant with all of our land use regulations and subdivision process. So, I'll support first reading in this context, but I really honestly believe the church should be a responsible citizen in our community relative to ensuring their development is compliant with all of our regulations and processes. And that they should get no special treatment just because they're a church. They're a developer, and they should comply with all the development regulations that we expect any other developer, and I guess that goes to your point, Mayor Katcher. Now, if the church is able to do that, then I fully support them going forward with a church in that location. I think it makes sense. But they should have to supply all of the things that a normal developer we would expect of a normal developer. So, I'll vote for first reading just to get it to go forward because there are a lot more questions that we need answers to from a planning and development standpoint before this thing gets third and final reading. So those are my comments about it. So.
Okay, thank you. So on round two, so somebody just mentioned the boneyard, the city's boneyard or our storage yard. So do we, because there's no ASP done for that area and we don't know what's happening with that, wouldn't that fall within like an area structure plan for that? So do we know what's going to happen with that? Because I'm just concerned any development of any kind could have an impact.
Through your worship, through the 2025 budget process, council did approve design funding for a new material handling site. At this time, we don't know what the future of the existing site looks like, but there is the potential for remediation and repurposing.
Okay. Okay. I'd just like to make sure I know that as well. Okay. Councillor Blizzard on close?
Nothing.
Nothing on close. I'll close first reading for bylaw C21 for first reading. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. Okay, thank you. Okay, the next one we have is bylaw C1824, point of pins, area structure plan for second and third reading.
Thank you, Your Worship. So hopefully for the last time today. Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Terrence Samra. I'm a planner with the city. I'm here to present a brief summary of bylaw C18-24, a new area structure plan in Point-au-Pins. In the council package, a technical report was included to provide detailed analysis of the amendments and justification. To begin, in February of 2023, Council authorized the initiation of a new area structure plan for approximately 158 hectares of land located south of West Park neighborhood, west of Highway 21, and east of the North Saskatchewan River. The subject area includes agricultural lands, a portion of the Point-au-Pins Creek and surrounding riparian areas, a formal gravel extraction site, and an established country residential subdivision, the Point-au-Pins Estates. First, I want to start with an overview of the approval process and the next steps. Currently, we are at the area structure plan stage. An area structure plan, or also known as ASP, is a statutory plan that guides land development and addresses items such as development sequence, general land use, population density, transportation network, and public utilities. The ASP is developed as per the terms of the guidelines of the terms of reference for an area structure plan and neighborhood structure plans, and must align with the municipal development plan. At this stage, the ASP and technical reports are reviewed, and engagement with the public occurs through open houses and online engagement. Once the area structure plan has received third reading, the next step is to create a neighborhood structure plan, which is also to be developed as per the terms of reference. An neighborhood structure plan, or NSP, focuses on a smaller area of the ASP, but provides finer grade details such as block configuration, parks and open spaces locations, and road and laneway locations. The preparation of an NSP will not be permitted unless an ASP has been adopted for the area where the NSP is proposed. The NSP is considered a chapter of the ASP, and this is completed as through an amendment to the ASP. Council is the approving authority for NSPs, and after the approval, redistricting applications are submitted. Once those applications are approved by Council, administration can accept applications for subdivision and development. The area circled in black is the next step once Council gives third reading to the bylaw of the ASP. Next, I want to discuss the neighborhood concept. This ASP envisions the Point-au-Pins area as a predominantly residential neighborhood within the city, designated to accommodate a growing population. At full development, the ASP will accommodate approximately 3,900 residents and 1,600 dwelling units through a variety of housing types, such as single-detached, semi-detached, semi-attached townhouses and apartments. First, I want to bring your attention to the orientation of the collector roads. The ASP is designed in a modified grid layout with 2 east-west collector roads and 2 north-south collector roads. Roundabouts are to be utilized at these intersections of the collector roads to ensure traffic calming, safety, and efficient movement. The orientation of the collector roads within the ASP is consistent with the MDP, as it supports the creation of a modified grid. Second is the type of development along collector roads. There's a policy within the MDP that speaks to locating higher density and community services along these roads. The purpose is to create an engaging street experience and enabling convenient access to services. This could be seen in the plan area as there is a mix of low and medium density along the southern east-west collector road and the 2 north-south collector roads. Commercial mixed use and residential mixed use can also be found along the 2 north-south collector roads. Third is a neighborhood node. A neighborhood node should include higher density housing choices, commercial opportunities and services, mixed use development, and an active gathering place. This can be seen as the purple star on the plan. Adjacent to this neighborhood node is residential mixed use, medium density, and a park site. The vision of this node aligns with the policies within the municipal development plan. Next is the location of the stormwater management facility, which is in the middle of the plan area. Currently a wetland, it will be transformed into a stormwater management facility, and by doing so, it aligns with the municipal development plan, as there is a policy that mentions incorporating established wetlands into stormwater management facilities. Another feature is the existing tree stand in the northeast portion of the plan, which is being preserved through the dedication of municipal reserve. The MDP mentions protecting and maintaining existing tree canopy through the urban forest plan. The ASP is also well connected to the existing neighborhood to the north, the neighborhood node, and to the river valley through the mobility network, which is consistent with the municipal development plan. Last is the distribution of parks and open spaces. Parks of various sizes are distributed throughout the plan area, including a future school site along the south end of the plan area. The location of the parks is consistent with the municipal development plan, as green spaces are located along the collector roads, and the location of the small-scale parks are within 5-minute walking distances of residents. A buffer is also included in the plan area to separate the existing Point of Pins residential subdivision and the proposed development. The buffer is about 10 meters wide and will contain a fence and landscaping features. This buffer is created through the dedication of municipal reserve. This slide speaks to the ASP and its conformance with planning documents. This application is the first ASP to be considered following the adoption of the municipal development plan and is developed following the terms of reference for preparing area structure plans and neighborhood structure plans. The ASP conforms with municipal development plan policies and objectives. The ASP is located in an area that is designated as part of the future urban areas in the municipal development plan. Neighborhoods in the future urban areas are designed as a place that meets the diverse needs of its residents and offers a high quality of life. Finally, new area structure plans are required to go through a regional evaluation framework approval process, as this is a new ASP and ASPs are considered as a statutory planning document. To note, administration received approval from the EMRB on December 18th, 2024. Next, I want to bring your attention to the process. The typical council process on the left side of the screen is the process that is used for a majority of the planning bylaw applications. This process is typically followed when no REF or regional evaluation framework application is required. As you know, council would give first reading, administration would advertise the public hearing, and at a separate council meeting, the public hearing, second and third reading is given to the bylaw. However, for applications that require a REF application, a separate process is used by administration. First, the public hearing is advertised, and then first reading and public hearing are completed at the first council meeting, followed by an EMRB review and decision, and finally, second and third reading are completed at a separate council meeting. The purpose of completing the public hearing after first reading is to ensure any changes necessary from public feedback are captured prior to submitting the REF. Please note that any changes made during second or third reading will require a subsequent REF application. As mentioned in the previous slide, the public hearing occurs after first reading, which was on September 24th, 2024. The public hearing was advertised in the Fort Record for 2 consecutive weeks. Notices were mailed out to property owners within the ASP plan area, and notice of the proposed bylaw was posted on the city's website and social media accounts. And at this time, I'd like to answer any questions that council may have for administration.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up for clarifying questions. Okay, I see Councillor Nguyen's hand went up first. I'm trying to wait for the people to come online here, but Councillor Nguyen, oh, just a second. Councillor Nguyen?
Yeah, okay, yeah, thanks. The stormwater managed facility or outcrop that's proposed within this area is probably the largest stormwater outfall within Fort Saskatchewan. This is existing watershed slough area within the fort. What is the environmental impact of this outfall into the creek that now we house in our municipal boundary?
Through your worship, to Councillor. Sorry, go ahead, Brittany. I do have Brittany Suchak here from WSP. You could probably speak on this as well. So go for it, Brittany.
Great.
I didn't know you were
Sure.
going to speak.
Hi there. Sorry about that. Through your worship, you're right. This is a very large stormwater pond, and as we start developing the NSP, there will be a number of environmental approvals that will be required in order to create that outfall from the pond into the creek. So those provincial requirements and approvals will either require us to create additional mitigation environmental measures or other design measures within the plan. But we don't know yet. But again, it's very controlled because it goes into the creek. So
yeah, can you elaborate on that? Because that entire quarter section of land is going to be draining into one tiny creek, and I'm very familiar with the habitat. This is extremely personal to me because I grew up on the banks of the Winnipeg Creek. I don't see how that's not going to get flooded by your design.
Yeah, and through your worship, I'm not sure I can answer the entirety of your question. I know for the environmental approvals, there'll be wildlife, fish, and other environmental approvals. Again, I believe the engineering studies will also have to be sent to the province for approval in terms of the amount of discharge from that stormwater pond. But I'm not sure. I can't answer how it will be impacted at this time. But again, that will all be looked at by the city and by the province.
Yeah, I believe that's under federal law, is it not? Fishery to the North Saskatchewan River.
You're right. Yeah, okay. DFO. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So on that basis, yeah, I'll reserve comments.
Okay.
Thanks for.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. I know I've asked this question before. Off-site levies, exactly when are they, I guess, triggered or invoiced, or do we expect payment? What's the triggering action for off-site levies? And this might be for Mr. Fleming, I don't know. And where are we in terms of our review of off-site levies, given that we're looking at new things like fire halls?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, I can speak to the first half of your question, definitely. So offsite levies, they can be triggered. There's a few times you can trigger an offsite levy, either at a subdivision application or through a development permit. In the end, it does lead to the same to the same end goal of how the levy, like for example, how it would be paid. But those are the two times. So in this case, subdivision would come first. So at that time, that's where you could request levies to be paid as part of a condition, like a subdivision approval.
Thank you. And the second part of the question regarding updated offsite levies?
Through your worship, there is a project that is ongoing to update the offsite levies. We are looking at soft costs that have not been traditionally included in offsites, including fire halls, for example. The consultant and the finance team were meeting this week to discuss the latest model. That model is in an early draft, but it is progressing.
And it will be, the ETA will be early enough to presumably have it applied to this subdivision?
Through your worship, that is our intent.
Okay, thank you. I'll come back in, Markatcher.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris.
I've raised this point before. I'm going to raise it again, and I'll continue to raise it. There's a 1.42 hectare tree stand area in the extreme northeast corner. Has the consulting team undertaken an inventory of the trees that are actually in that stand? And if so, do you have an inventory of the different types of trees, either deciduous or conifer, that are currently in that tree stand? And what are the future plans for that tree stand relative to the fact that I know that our administration has said that they love trees, and I think we all love trees, but was there a technical analysis done on the quality of that tree stand before it was dedicated in this area, in this draft, as a kind of an MR area.
Through your worship, Councillor Harris, yeah, it would have been part of one of the technical reports. I can't remember which one offhand, but also when it comes to the types of trees, that all would be part in that report. But also through the urban forest plan, there would be, you would want to keep these tree canopies for reasons such as, like, say, heat reduction, things like that, right? So that is why the municipality has decided to dedicate municipal reserve to preserving this tree stand, because there are benefits, and also through policies within other documents that the city uses.
It may surprise you, there are 12 conifer trees and nothing of any value in that. I've walked through it and there's nothing of value. So that's why I'm curious if you can give me point me in the direction of an inventory that was done on the trees that are in there, because I think they have little to no value of what you're talking about. So that's why I'm curious about that. And that can wait for another time. But obviously I have concerns about the tree stand in that area because I think it's in an inappropriate location. So that's why I'm asking the question.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go on to round 2. Councillor Nguyen, and please really try and speak into your mic.
I'm going to try my best here, Mayor. So the next question I have regarding this is how, and this is a general question for Taryn and Craig, how is this aligned with the Rural Agricultural Master Plan and preserving prime agricultural land?
Through Councillor Doyle, the ASP, it does align in a number of ways. First, like there are in the Regional Agriculture Master Plan, it talks about, for example, about topsoil management, what you're going to do with your topsoil, how you're going to move your topsoil or remove it or adding things like that. Another way is preserving existing agricultural lands that are adjacent to, say, agricultural lands that are being developed. So there are policies within the ASP that speak to that. So that would be a couple of ways that the ASP is complying with the Regional Agriculture Master Plan.
So how is this preserving topsoil?
Well, it's not so much. It could be like topsoil management. No. So it could be. Sorry, go ahead. No, definitely.
No, complete your answer. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, everybody stop.
Must be an answer. Oh, sorry, I thought you said complete your answer. No, like when it comes to topsoil management, like things that, for example, municipalities speak to each other when moving topsoil, you want to make sure that you have proper topsoil, or you're bringing in proper topsoil that wouldn't, say, be contaminated or things like that. So those are some of the policies for sure.
Okay, my other question, and this is going to be close to my last question, is last time I inquired with WSP about sewage connections for the Point of Pins existing acreage owner residents. They seemed to indicate in my last line of questioning that this was very easy to be provided with little to no cost. Did you receive any feedback or updates from them regarding this servicing tie-in for the estates?
Through your worship to Councillor, no, I'm not aware of any. I'm not too sure the answer to your question on that one. Sorry.
And that's fair. If you didn't receive any communication regarding that, I'd like to ask that to the developer and the engineer in the next round.
Okay. Councillor Kelly, you're next.
Thank you. Of all of the 800 pages of material that council got on this subject, I did actually, I was stressed, I did not read it all, but I certainly scrolled through it. And starting around page 140, we hit the geotechnical study, and I found parts of that interesting. That study references high water table in some of the area, different soil types that can be problematic for construction and around trenching for underground utilities. The report also gave recommendations on how to remediate some of those issues. So my question is, I guess, twofold. One to the developer or the developer's representative, and then a second one to our administration. Firstly, to the developer's representative, what procedures or policies are in place to ensure that the future development of this area will pay attention to the recommendations that are embedded within the geotechnical report?
Through your worship. So we, again, like you said, we have the geotechnical report. Those policies will again be reflected when we develop our NSP. And then I believe we will be held to the recommendations of the geotechnical report once the next planning steps occur, such as subdivision, rezoning, and then into development of servicing and construction through development agreements and so forth. Correct me if I'm wrong, Taryn, but I believe that's how kind of everything will be linked.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Kelly. Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to say too, Brittany, is that once you have an ASP, you have usually your high level policies that give direction to the next stage of planning documents. For example, in this case, like the NSP. So yeah, we do have a geotechnical report now, but at the next stage, you would get into refining once you get into that NSP area.
This is the first go around for council on any of this stuff. So if in fact the geotechnical doesn't apply until the NSP, and this was not my question, but I'll ask it right now. Why in fact then were we given that information, and why in fact is that information provided if it is of no relevance until the next step of the program?
Through your worship, Council, I would probably disagree and say with the no relevance. I think these technical reports provide relevance because they provide the direction to the next step, right? So in this case, you have the geotech, which provides an overview of the ASP area, but once you get into that NSP, any specifics or anything that was recommended at that first geotechnical report would be brought forward into those other NSP NSP geotechnical reports.
And Mayor Katcher, just one follow-up question to this, and I'll weigh back in. But on the subject of the geotechnical report, from an administration's perspective, what procedures or policies does administration have in place to ensure that when development takes place on areas of property or land that could be problematic, that in fact the procedures are being followed to adequately ensure that building foundations and or underground installations and or road surface preparation is done in a manner that is in the proper manner to protect all interested parties, being it future residents and or the city of Fort Saskatchewan and its interests in the development land?
I can answer that through your worship to Councillor Kelly. So I think it's important to note that the process of planning is very much hierarchical, and I think we've touched on that. So kind of starts at a very high level with the MDP. Now we're working with an area structure plan, and then it goes down to a more finer grained plan with the neighborhood structure plan. With the development of an area structure plan, we do ask for technical studies, and you pointed out the geotechnical. So it is, what it can do is it can certainly impact the ASP itself. So for example, where to put certain types of uses could certainly be impacted with the results of the geotechnical. I think what the findings of the geotechnical said was that the lands are not uncommon. It's fairly typical than what we would see in Fort Saskatchewan, and it wouldn't necessarily impede development, but further work could be looked at a subsequent stage. So we could flesh that out in more detail, certainly at the neighborhood structure plan stage. We could also flesh it out in even greater detail at the subdivision stage, right down to the development permit. So each step along the way gives us another tool to actually deal with it in some way. We have the ability to have the plan revised or suggest different types of land uses or incorporate certain types of policies that give direction down to the next stage. So at the end of the day, when development does happen, it's a robust enough process that we've done our due diligence to make sure that the buildings are going to be safe and secure.
And thank you, Mr. Thomas, but what precise procedures are in place to make sure that the buildings are secure? I understand there's a hierarchy, but at the end of the day, something has to happen. What normally happens to make sure that the buildings are secure?
So through you, Worship, we could ask those questions at the next stage to provide maybe subsequent more detailed reports in terms of, you know, specific areas of the plan to make sure that they are suitable for that land use. If we are satisfied that it is, you know, we could ask for also more detailed information at the subdivision stage. But a lot of times that's not required because we would have dealt with it at that particular stage.
Do we ever actually audit the development process to make sure that the design standards are being adhered to?
Through your worship, how do you mean by an audit? I mean, I think there's due diligence. I think that's built into the process itself.
I don't want to debate it any further. With respect, I don't think you've answered my question, and maybe I haven't been clear. I'm going to think about it and way back in. Thank you, Mayor Katcher. I'm done for now.
Okay, thank you. That looks like all of the questions. Oh, is your hand, just a second, is your hand up, Councillor Nguyen, or you're just adjusting? Okay. Oh. Okay, just let me breathe for a second. All right. Okay. Councillor Nguyen, I'll go to you first and then back to Councillor Kelly.
Yeah. Further to the geotech report, there's well water at 120 feet near the bank, overcrop to the creek. Has this been looked at all at this point? Or is this something that is going to be at the neighborhood level?
Through worship of Councillor Nguyen, like when it comes to our technical reports, like we do circulate them and we do get our input from our different departments, and in the end we do have a discussion with the from our comments we have a discussion with the consultant and the developer. So these things would have been looked at during that circulation review period.
Okay, so there's confidence then in developability of these lands subsequent to initial investigation.
Do worship with Councillor Nguyen, yeah, I would agree with that. And like I kind of mentioned, like when it comes to like doing reports, and Mr. Thomas mentioned, like, when you do the reports in a hierarchical way, that yeah, you do have these reports do kind of touch at a very high level, but like once you go down into like the NSP and the subdivision and the development permit stage, that you do start refining exactly what the geotech recommendations or what the geotech like information would come out of it. But at this time, yeah, there weren't any major concerns or any concerns regarding these reports through our circulation process.
Okay, good enough. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor Katcher. I think rather than beat this subject up at this particular time, I'm going to ask, is it administration's plan that this geotechnical study be included one more time for council's reference when it comes to the neighborhood development process?
Through your worship, Councillor Kelly. So yeah, so council is the approving authority when it comes to neighborhood structure plans. So all the, like when it comes to the application, any technical reports, like this would all be part of that package. So it'll be a large, not as large as 900 pages, but I imagine a lot of the reports would be brought forward to you at that neighborhood structure plan approval stage.
Okay, well, rather than and I appreciate your answer, but rather than imagine, I'm going to take it that you assure council that in fact this particular study out of the 900 pages will be carried forward so that we can reference it and have continued discussions as this process works forward.
Through Worship Council Kelly, yes. So when you do have these type of recommendations or policies within your area structure plan, you do want to bring them forward to your next level of hierarchical planning. So yeah, if there are any recommendations, they would be brought forward to that next level.
And I'm just asking something really simple. Don't assume that I'm being complicated. This particular geotechnical report or its follow-up work will be included in the study so that we can talk about it at that time.
Through your worship, Councillor Kelly, yes, at the next geotechnical report will be part of that next planning document that is approved by that NSP document that is approved by council.
Okay, we can have this discussion going forward. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, that appears to be all of the questions. What is wish council? Councillor Blizzard.
I can make the motion.
Go ahead.
I'd make a motion that council gives second reading to bylaw C-18-24 to adopt the Point-a-Pins area structure plan as attached as Schedule A to the January 14th, 2025 council report. And in speaking to that, I think this is an exciting time. We will get a new area structure plan for what will be a brand new subdivision in our area, referred to now instead of West Park. I think it's going to be named Point-a-Pins. And I think as we delve deeper into it, there will be other structure plans that will still be looked at. So we will get a look back again to make sure it adheres to what council wants.
Okay, thank you. It's open for discussion and debate. Councillor Harris.
I'm conflicted on approving this one. I like 98% of the document that has been brought to our attention today for second and third reading. I asked a question about the tree stand thing. I think it's in the wrong place. I don't think the trees have any redeeming value. And I think the tree stand in that area ultimately is in the wrong location. I think it is inconsistent with a higher and better use, which would be commercial on the highway commercial area. I think it actually detracts from the commercial that's just to the north. So I'm opposed to it from that standpoint. But from a planning standpoint, and in deference to Councillor Kelly's questions about geotechnical, I think anything can be engineered in an appropriate manner, and as long as our administration is watching out for those things, which is their job, then the developer should be able to develop it in accordance with the plan. So that's what I'm conflicted about. It's a small thing, but I've made these comments and nobody's listened. And it really bothers me to that extent because those trees, I've wandered through that area. I don't think anybody else in this room has wandered through that area, and they're trees that have little or no redeeming value. Trembling aspen, caragana, no value. I would rather see, quite frankly, the developer use that a higher, better use and designate appropriate MR in an area that ultimately probably is closer to where the stormwater management area is and could act as a buffer to the Point-a-Pins existing subdivision. So I think that would be a higher and better use. So I'm kind of on the horns of a dilemma as to whether I can support it. I like what the developer's done, bringing it forward. I think it makes sense. It's the next logical area to develop in our community, but I'm conflicted. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly on debate.
Councillor Harris, I did listen. I support your view on that tree stand. I think it's too small to be of value as a native tree stand or native area. And given its size and its location, I think it's primarily an eyesore. And I do think that reserve could be better allocated somewhere in the development, not only to better serve the residents and to probably make that whole development a little more efficient in terms of economic value. So I support removing that tree stand. It sticks in my mind that there was an initial plan done that did not have the tree stand and that it was changed to preserve the tree stand. And perhaps we should have been a little more, stated our thoughts a little more strongly at that particular juncture. And I also agree that things can be engineered. my questions revolved around who's watching out and what are the processes and procedures in place to make sure that we're watching out. And I didn't get answers that I understood or appreciated. So all I was trying to do at the end of my discussion for the last round was ensure that I'll have another opportunity as this marches forward to ask those questions yet again. So I want to support it, but I don't like the tree stand. And maybe I need a question, Mayor Catcher. And this could go back to our admin people. If council doesn't like the tree stand and wants it moved, does that mean we have to not support this particular ASP and look for a change and bring it back yet again?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly. So the next step in the process would be the incorporation of a neighborhood structure plan. So what the neighborhood structure plan is it becomes part of the area structure plan itself. So at that point, council will have an opportunity to look not just at the neighborhood structure plan portion of the ASP, but also the ASP itself. Because ultimately, when that NSP comes forward, we're bringing forward the ASP itself. So what we could do, if it is the wish of council, is we can look at that tree stand, and if it makes sense to reallocate that MR, that's something that we would have to work with the developer on. Just my initial thoughts is I wouldn't recommend that, because the tree stand we felt had value to the plan itself. We felt that there was ecological value, as well as it did support some habitat, and that was found in the biophysical study as well. But if it would be the wish of council, that would be information that we would bring back at the NSP stage.
And that might work, but the NSP stage takes this entire land mass or land area, divides it up into smaller sections. So if this particular corner with the tree stand was the last section subject to an NSP, it would be too late to change anything. Is that possible? I'm wondering how it is we get rid of the thing. And I value your comments, but I see the potential that in fact it might not work.
Through you, worship Councillor Kelly. No, again, like when the NSP comes forward, it is essentially the area structure plan that would be coming forward. So again, if it would be the wish of council, we could certainly work with the developer in having that amended.
So what I'm hearing you say, Mr. Thomas, is that the NSP, because of the size of this particular ASP, the NSP is going to cover the entire property yet again. It's one NSP.
Through your worship, no, not necessarily. What I'm saying is that when the NSP is finalized, what we do is we bring back the entire area structure plan, and the neighborhood structure plan is incorporated within it. So even though you could look at it as being what you're doing is amending the area structure plan because it incorporates the neighborhood structure plan inside of it as a chapter.
Frankly, I think that's a slope we get on, and we'll find ourselves committed to the tree stand even if we don't appreciate it. And for this reason only, I am going to vote against this ASP. I think the work that's been done has been great. I do agree with Councillor Harris that tree stand is too small to be of significance, and I don't think there's any value in it. And in terms of the best value, it's right beside existing commercial, and it probably should be commercial given its location to that particular intersection. So on that basis alone, I'm voting against the area structure plan. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Nguyen on the next round.
Yeah, thank you. first, in response to a few comments made by Councillor Harris and Councillor Kelly, that tree stand had value with the wildlife associated with it in the entire Forest Ridge area. Since I was 4 years old, I traveled around Forest Ridge when it was a forest and enjoyed the natural beauty that it was. That has now been developed, and that tree stand in question is a run where deer would make over there back and forth to the river when there was less traffic in the area. Pertaining to Councillor Harris's comment about the value of the tree stand, I find that a little bit concerning, seeing that there was a disruption with my intent to remove a $200,000 budget 3 years ago for trees installed in the West River's Edge area that were planted and not natural. And to me, that tree stand area would have been well over the budget for those new trees, or the existing trees in that tree stand area. However, regardless of trees and anything in this area structure plan, I do support the ASP as it stands. However, I do have concerns with waterfall into the Point of Pins Creek area. And furthermore, I don't think enough discussions have been had with the Point of Pin residents regarding tying into servicing with the city of Fort Saskatchewan a sewage. So for that reason, at this point, I do agree that we're 98% there, but at this point, I'm going to be voting against this motion.
Okay, I'm next in the speaking orders, so I am going to support second reading of this. I find all of these comments really interesting because at first reading and even at the public sessions with the stakeholders that showed up, that was one question that I had, and I think it was a compromise at that point in time with the developer to leave the tree stand. At least that's kind of the opinion that I had when I was listening to them. I'm going to support this so that we can move the process along. Hopefully it'll get enough support to move it along so that we can come back with the neighborhood one. Once it gets second and third reading, I do believe there is an opportunity for us to go back and to look at doing an amendment if that's what council wants. But at this point in time, I would say in order to move this along so it technically doesn't have to go back to the MRB, which I don't think they're accepting any ref applications right now anyway. I would just say, maybe support it, and then we can deal with it once it's had third reading and figure out how we go from there. Because at first reading, I know we had some of this conversation, but I didn't hear a majority that was saying to take it out at that point in time. So just a little confused with this right now, but that would kind of be where I would suggest we get to so that we can get to the next step and look at the neighborhood one. And if council so chooses after it has approval, somebody could put a notice of motion on too to come back and meet with the developer and deal with it to see where council is at with it. Okay, that's where I'm at with this. Councillor Macon, you're kind of on round one, I think.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to support this ASP. I understand that there's some concerns, but what I'm hearing is that those can still be addressed through the next step of the process. So I would like to see this actually continue along its path. And I do have the same recollection as Mayor Ketcher that the tree stand was added in at the request of some concerns that had been brought forward through the communication with residents in the area. So for those reasons, I'm going to support it. And I think that any of the concerns can still be brought forward through the next step.
Okay, thank you. We're on like round 3 or 4. Councillor Harris, go ahead.
I would have been more strident in my concerns about the tree stand in the last go-round. However, I sense from our administration, who are tree huggers, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I understand the value of trees totally. But in this location, in that area, with the types of trees that are in there, they have no redeeming value. And wildlife wandering through that area, through a built-up area of an urban area, isn't really all that crucial, I don't think. Deer wandering through there, when this area is developed, they'll be skirting around Fort Saskatchewan, I hope, so that we don't have what happened last night where multiple wildlife were killed on Highway 21 because they were crossing the highway. So, like I said, I'm on the horns of a dilemma because I think a lot of good work has gone into this, and I do support the developer in relation to wanting to see this area developed because I think it is contingent with logical extension of development in that area of West Park. But I raised those concerns. I raised them to the consulting group, and I expressed concern, and I was fobbed off, and basically I was blown off when I raised those concerns at one of the public input sessions where Point-au-Pins residents were there. I doubt if Point-au-Pins residents really care about that tree stand or not. They're a long ways away from it. Development's going to take place in this area that ultimately will buffer them from their major irritant, which what I think would be the highway. So that's what I'm concerned about. And I would vote for it under normal circumstances, but once we vote for it, it's in there, and that tree stand's never going to go away. Its highest and best use from a development standpoint is in a commercial context as a highway commercial designated area consistent with what is immediately to the north. And, ultimately high density further to the south at that future intersection on Highway 21. So from a planning standpoint, I'm concerned that my comments, and I thank you, Councillor Kelly, for your iteration of my comments at that last instance. But that's what I'm concerned about. If they, the tree canopy in that area has a lifespan of no more than 20 to 25 years tops. And then they regenerate, and the trembling aspen and the aspen in that area grow off of a single root. And so they generate. So ultimately, I think we could have a much better tree canopy somewhere else that would be consistent with the MR in the balance of the built-up area to act as a better buffer for the neighbors in that area, as opposed to buffering it from the highway and commercial future use. So on that basis, I will vote against it. So if the rest of council believes that, or enough of council believe it should go forward, then I would be looking to administration, the developer, to find a solution to that problem that addresses my concerns. And they are significant concerns in my mind. So that's where I'm coming from.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Kelly, you're back on.
Thank you. I guess I don't have a lot to add. I would think that a better location for an enhanced green area would be around the storm water pond. I don't know how that fits into designing a neighborhood though. But I do think it's significant. I don't think, and notwithstanding Councillor Noyan's fond memories of watching deer go across that field is going to cease to exist. And that little parcel in the corner isn't going to be a habitat for any form of animal larger than a rabbit or a coyote or maybe the odd porcupine. It's just not enough space there. And it does, the larger animals, as Councillor Harris just pointed out, do present a hazard to the traffic on the highway. So not all tree stands have to be natural. Fort Saskatchewan is very fortunate. We have many, many miles of natural tree stands along the river and the river bottoms. And this little corner along the highway at a busy commercial intersection, I think, is inappropriate. And I guess the reason for 3 readings on anything of significance, such as a land use application, is that it gives councillors such as me time to dwell and digest and come up with new thoughts. I think many times the thought process would be different if in fact it was only one reading. And I do suggest rather strongly that that is the reason for 3 readings, is to give proper due diligence to these decisions. And my mind now sits with the tree stand as being inappropriate. And I would encourage administration, if this passes, I would encourage administration and the developers to give it some thought, because they're going to get pushback on every NSP that comes forward if it isn't dealt with. So let's see what happens if in fact this passes. I don't think it has to pass. My opinion only. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to go to administration. So as I've indicated, or what you've told us, is that should this get second and third reading today, that something could come back as a change. I'm looking, I would hate to see this fail, but I don't know where a majority of council is as well. So I guess I'm just looking process-wise. If it passes, it passes, but I would say process-wise, somebody could put a notice of motion on to come back and revisit the tree stand. Like, just give me some different options so that council as a whole can feel comfortable if everybody's going to give it readings or not.
So, Your Worship, if the area structure plan gets approved today, that approves the area structure plan. For development to happen, the neighborhood structure plan portion would have to also be approved. That plan is incorporated into the area structure plan. So when the neighborhood structure plan is created by the consultant, we're ready to bring it forward. Essentially what we're doing is we're bringing forward the area structure plan again, and it will include the more detailed neighborhood structure plan. So I'll just give you an example, and not using this particular area structure plan as an example, but let's say an area structure plan would include one section of land with 4 quarter sections. Each quarter section would be a neighborhood. We would bring forward the area structure plan similarly to what we're doing today. That will give kind of the policy and the land use concept, and incorporated with the technical studies and everything else. And then the next stage would be the neighborhood structure plan. The developer would come back and add to that area structure plan and include the one neighborhood. When the second neighborhood develops out, that would be a second neighborhood structure plan. It would be another. So essentially that area structure plan keeps going back to council for approval. Council can look at the entire document comprehensively, as well as the more detailed chapters, which would be the neighborhood structure plan. So I hope that gives some clarity, but I think to the point of your question, it does give council the opportunity to look at the entire document again.
And if council wants, majority of council wanted to take the tree stand out after that it received third reading, then they would have to wait till the neighborhood one came forward? Or is there something that could be done beforehand? Like, without knowing where a majority of council is at, and I'm hearing there's some concerns, you know, and I would hate to see this fail today, because even I don't support the tree stand there, but I don't want to see this fail. So I guess I'm just looking for how it could be expedited quicker to find out where the actual desire of council is at.
Your Worship, yeah, in terms of if there was a notice of motion and it would need to come back, maybe I could defer to Mr. Fleming, but I think if there was a notice of motion where there was a significant change to the plan, you know, and obviously the EMRB, the REF process is a little bit different, but I don't know if that would mean starting from scratch, or if that would just mean going through an amendment. It would be a fairly significant change to the plan, and I think there would be a considerable amount of work that would have to be done. My suggestion would be is continue with the process, because when it gets to the point where we bring the neighborhood structure plan back, that way it could be specifically spoken to at first reading, whether or not there would be a change to that plan. If it was more or less kept the same, we would have to provide justification and rationale for that, and council can take that into consideration at that time.
Okay, so there are steps that can be done, mitigate it.
Certainly.
Okay, I will leave it with that for now. Okay, so I'm going to go to Councillor Blizzard. I think you're back on like around way back, so you're first. Go ahead.
So the stand of trees, I'm actually happy that it was kept in here. One of my favorite places to walk when I walk on groomed pathways is actually a little portion of a trail right across the street from where the Price Alderson Park sign is. They kept woods there, although there's a paved pathway running through it. And there's times you feel like, geez, you're in the middle of a forest for just a minute or two's walk, but it feels a lot nicer than walking through James Mowat Park where everything's leveled and there's a couple of giant trees. So I actually like that we have some natural areas. And instead of, if we take this stand down, that's exactly what's going to happen. It will be replaced somewhere else within it because they still have to put parks in, but it will be a flat area that'll be 3 big trees on it or a couple of pines. And aspen is a natural tree to that area. That isn't an unnatural. Aspen is natural in Alberta, in the whole region. So that is a natural tree. Yes, maybe we won't see deer there, but you will see squirrels and other little chipmunks. When I walk pathways where there's even a bit of rough ground where it's not groomed all underneath, there's all kinds of critters, snakes and everything else. So I think it is vital to have it. And for kids to grow up and to have a natural tree stand, whether they can get in the middle of it or whether they just run by it. It is something important to have, not all groomed grounds underneath all of our trees. So I, for one, feel that it is vital to keep an area in there because I don't think there's much natural tree stands left. A lot of it, when we look at it, is big, wide farmland. Years ago, they used to drain ponds that were, well, it's just a little slough, and found out that, wait, that's vital to birds and all kinds of things. So I think it is vital to leave some of it in, and I definitely am okay with a second reading, I'm okay with third reading, and I'm definitely okay with that tree stand.
Okay, thank you. Back into the order. Councillor Harris and then Councillor Kelly.
To a developer, commercially designated land has a higher value per net developable hectare than MR. And I think that the developer should see this as an opportunity, at least in the minds of some members of council, that is has a higher and better use, which would suggest that if they can do that, then ultimately there's net payback from selling it as commercial adjacent to the highway. And making a significant investment elsewhere in this very significantly sized area, structure plan area, that would ultimately go to the whole land, not just a few pines here and there and whatnot, but something that ultimately could inure to the benefit of that whole area. So in one hand, we're taking something away, but we're giving the developer something of significant value, in my opinion, and I understand the value of commercial land from that standpoint. So I think that the payback of the developer is to ultimately offset their cost of development in a meaningful way by making it a meaningful development that they can market as they develop and sell it out. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And I'm not going to let this thing die, but if it passes today at third reading, so be it. That's what I'm suggesting to administration. We need to have a continued discussion with the developer in that regard, because once this passes, that tree stand is going to be a tree stand for in perpetuity, I would imagine. And I think it was mentioned earlier, we probably have one of the most significant urban forest canopies of any community in the area with our adjacency to the North Saskatchewan River. So I think our community is committed to trees. We love trees. You look at the stands of elms that we have in our developed area, very significant. And I think within the last 3-4 months, we had a tree study that was presented to council, which demonstrated the inventory of canopy that we have. So that's the horns of the dilemma that I'm on. So I'm going to vote against it, but only on that one very small part. So I want the developer to understand that that's my major concern, and they need to try to find a solution to that. But also administration has supported this thing going forward. And ultimately I'm concerned about administration would just say, well, whatever. So those are my thoughts, and I'll let it sit there and we'll see where the vote ends up.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kelly, and then I'm going to close the motion.
Thank you. Just wanted to get back to the point that Councillor Nguyen raised earlier on about the stormwater management system and the probable, I'm going to suggest probable, not potential, but probable damage to the Pointe-aux-Pins Creek bed due to this outfall. He asked a question and we got a response back that while I appreciate the response, really didn't answer one portion of his concerns. Didn't address the concerns whatsoever. Well, we're going to look at it. I have a concern that once this is passed, Councillor Harris has referenced it, I believe it to be true, that once this is passed, it's going to be there. The outfall to Pointe-aux-Pins, I don't know if there's a solution, but it would be nice to know what the impact on Pointe-aux-Pins Creek would be or could be, and what the remediation or mediation to prohibit that or limit that damage could be. Not just to say, yeah, we're going to look at it and we're going to proceed. We'll look at it. We'll figure it out. We're going to proceed. So I got two problems with this. The tree stand I consider a waste of time and energy. Anybody that's had squirrels in their house will understand that you don't need squirrels next to any residential or commercial structure. They are extremely damaging. Pointe-aux-Pins Creek, I think, is a natural area that has far more value and importance to the area than this tiny little tree stand of aspens. And it's not natural. It was developed. The pictures showed clearly the junk that's been left in there, and the aspen simply grew up around it. And just to point out an obvious fact, if the farm field adjacent to this area, the farm field that we're talking about right now, was not cultivated for 10 years, that entire field would regrow with aspens. That doesn't mean it's natural. That's just what happens with aspens. They are essentially a dandelion, only much taller and with bigger leaves. So I have a couple of problems. If administration could give us a little more guidance on the potential effects to the Pointe-aux-Pins Creek, I'd appreciate it. And I hesitate to see this thing get passed and expect that a notice of motion is going to solve the problem, because it's not. The same people that vote for this will not vote for the notice of motion, and nothing will get resolved. And we're going to end up hashing this out at the neighborhood structure plan stage. And I'd like to avoid that if possible. So we'll see what happens. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blizzard on close. You're good. Motion is closed for second reading. Please cast your vote.
Your Worship, we're just waiting for Councillor Macon.
Did not come up, but I vote in favor.
And that is carried. Would you like to continue on with third?
Sure.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I make a motion that council give third reading to bylaw C18-24 to adopt Point of Pins area structure plan as attached as Schedule A to the January 14th, 2025 council report. And I have nothing further to say.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything further on discussion and debate? Okay, not seeing any. I'm going to close the motion. Please cast your vote.
Nothing is coming up again. Mayor Catcher, I vote in favor.
Okay, thank you. And that is carried. Okay, we've been at this for 2 hours and 20 minutes. So we're going to take a 10-minute break. So everybody back in your chairs at 4:30. 4:30. If everybody would like to come back on, we'll get started again. Okay. All right. The next item that we have is dealing with a notice of motion. Councillor Macon, you can read it in and then you may speak to it. Go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, my computer just blipped for a second. I'll make the motion that Council direct administration to provide a report by the end of the first quarter of 2025 on the city's ability to provide weekday evening local transit service and Saturday local transit service, and that the report include the operating and capital cost implications of each service, along with implementation timeline, options, and other relevant information.
Okay, thank you. You can speak to it.
Thank you. Today I'm just looking for the information Council needs to make a decision on enhancing our transit program. Our program will never see growth unless its availability supports more people. The evening and weekend service is essential to many of our residents. I've heard from many families and organizations that independence and job opportunities for many of our residents depends on accessibility to transit. I am hoping Council will support gathering this information so we can make an informed decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The motion has been accepted, spoken in favor, and is open for discussion and debate. Councillor Blizzard, you're first.
I'm not against increased services. I think busing is vital, but I'm also realistic in that it's going to add quite a bit of a cost when we increase to evenings and weekends. And my other concern is this an easy to obtain report? Is this going to be a lot of work? Is this something that we have compiled, or do we need to add staff time? Like, does someone have time to do this?
To your worship, just at a high level, I believe that this information was produced about kind of last May or June when we did a review of the transit program. So I do believe that it's readily available enough that they can bring it back and just sort of update it.
Okay, thank you very much. I can support this motion on that. Nothing wrong with looking at it, but it is good to be aware that there's always cost implications.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly on the motion.
Yes, thank you. I'll support it as well. I have the same concerns that Councillor Blizzard just expressed. I think our analysis and costing analysis also needs to include some minimum acceptable standards and or productivity requirements to justify having these extra hours. I very much doubt that they make economic sense, but I'm certainly willing to listen. So yeah, let's see what it brings. I'm skeptical though, but I will vote for this motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris.
I'll support the motion. I think our service goes until about 8 o'clock at night, if that's not correct. About 8 o'clock, right. Utilization of the buses at 8 o'clock or between 7 and 8 is really low. They drives by my house and I watch it going by and there's nobody on it. But that's not a bad thing. The fact remains is that as we expand service, and the cost issue is definitely a prudent thing to be concerned about, but as we expand service, then we get people to actually see that it is a viable service that they can rely on and utilize to get around the community or in the region, as the case may be. I think realistically going beyond 8 o'clock doesn't make a lot of economic sense, and I suspect the review would probably suggest that. It probably makes sense to look at a Saturday service and promote the heck out of it. And so I'll support it on that basis, and those are just some comments that I would make relative to the expansion of the service. We are doing the review, as Councillor Kelly had requested, in relation to the expansion of transit into newly developed areas of the community. And I think in that context and in conjunction with this, it definitely makes sense. But I think it's one of those ones that if we build it and we promote it properly, I think we can get people seen as a cogent, a reasonable service that they can use and take advantage of instead of having to rely on cars. There's a large segment of our community that don't probably drive cars, kids, young adults, that sort of thing. Ultimately, I think if it's promoted properly, we can move towards a better cost recovery basis. So I'll support it on that basis.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to support the motion as well. I do remember when it was brought forward, I think it was back in May, and it provided all the options and it talked about, you know, when different service levels could or should be looked at. I also believe Saturday service is something that is really warranted. There's a lot of people who work on Saturdays, and so if they buy a monthly pass, no, it's not going to generate any more revenue for us. But for these people, it's providing a service. It's getting them to work. It's getting them to where they need to be. And there are a lot of people in this community who would like to get around on weekends, you know, so I'm all for looking at, you know, how we move something forward so that we can really serve the public that needs to be served. So I will absolutely support this. Okay, any other on discussion and debate? Trying to look, not seeing anything. Councillor Macon on close.
Nothing other than I appreciate the support, and let's vote.
Okay, thank you. The motion is now closed. Please cast your vote.
I vote in favor.
Okay, and that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Are there any new notice of motions? Okay, it doesn't look like it. Okay. All right, so I will move on to, are there any points of interest? Okay, it looks like we're good on that one. Are there any councillor inquiries to administration? Okay, we appear to be good there. I'm looking for hands. Okay, so I'm going to take a motion to go in camera, but we have one item that we're going to have to return from. So we're going to go in camera to deal with the one item specifically. Once we've had the information provided, we will return to open to deal with it, and then we'll go back into in camera. So if I can get a motion to go in camera, please. Councillor Blizzard.
I make a motion that we go in camera for the item needed to be discussed.
Okay, thank you very much. Motion is closed. Please cast your vote. Okay, and that is carried unanimously, so we will be back as soon as we can. Okay, we are returning from our closed session to deal with business arising out of the closed session, which is the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board membership. I don't have Troy sitting there, so.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe we do have a draft motion for council's consideration, and I'll just ask our legislative services team if they could display the motion, and if a member of council is so willing, they could move the motion as displayed.
Okay. Councillor Harris.
I'd be prepared to move that the City of Fort Saskatchewan inform the Minister of Municipal Affairs that it is opting not to participate as a voluntary member of the Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Board.
Okay, thank you. Do you wish to speak to it?
Well, it's unfortunate that the province has taken the step that they have to really put a nail in the coffin of generally a successful regional planning environment, and that is unforgivable, really, on their part. But I think in this case, by doing this, we could conceivably create an opportunity where there will be future discussions, both from an urban and a rural perspective, into how we as a region can grow in an appropriate manner and develop in an appropriate manner. So I guess that might be left to the future councils, or I can't see it happening within the next 8 months, 9 months. But ultimately, I think we're in a position where we actually have to advise the minister that we're not going to do it in a voluntary context.
Okay, thank you. The motion is open for discussion and debate. I'm just going to make a comment because I've sat on the EMRB for 15 years now, and I know it's been very difficult for a lot of municipalities that went from 24 to 15 or 13, and it's always very difficult when you are trying to work as a region or a collaborative, and unless you've got specific regulations in place, and I think that's the difficult part, it's always easy for people to walk away from things. So as soon as it was told that it was going to be on a voluntary basis, and we had to make a decision if we want it to be voluntary or not, my concern was, well, as an urban, if everybody isn't part of it, then we are just an island unto ourselves, and there is nothing that we can do regionally. So I guess I'm just saying I'm hoping that message gets carried, that when you put something out there voluntary, if you don't have the parameters to deal with it, and as Councillor Harris said, I anticipate the councils of the future will deal with what maybe a new entity looks like. But once again, unless it's for the entire region, it's very difficult to do regional planning. So I am going to support the motion, and I think that that's what has to be conveyed back to the provincial government. So anything on close?
No.
All right, the motion is closed. Please cast your vote by, I think, raising your card. I don't know.
No, it's on our iPads.
Oh, I'm okay.
Yes, it is. There.
Okay, and that is carried unanimously. So I'll take a motion to go back in camera. Councillor Macon, do you want to make that one?
I'll make the motion that we go back in camera for reasons covered under FOIP.
Okay, thank you. Please cast your vote. Please cast your vote. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much.